All right, the other day we had talked about how Sony had apparently identified the individuals who were responsible for the Last of Us Part 2 leaks, the ones that are online that show significant plot points that were definitely not supposed to be online. It spoils quite a bit of the game, and I'm not going to be talking about it here. However, if you don't want to be spoiled, I would recommend avoiding the internet, like all of it, because they're everywhere. And in fact, it's to the point now where Naughty Dog seems to be striking down channels and tweets, and it is a disaster online right now. That's definitely not what the copyright system is for. But just in case, I decided to put this video on the second channel, and I think I'll stick, for the most part, with Last of Us Part 2 details, discussions like for all of this stuff going down on this channel, because if the main channel gets a strike, then we won't be live streaming, which means there wouldn't be any spawn casts. So, yeah. It is all staying here, but we do have an interesting new development that I wanted to cover because it kind of leans into one of those possibilities that we had talked about before when it comes to how this all happened. Because, I mean, if you really think about it, how did this happen, right? Isn't that kind of the thought here? Is like, this was such a big title. It's one that Naughty Dog's been working on for so long now. It is highly anticipated, and it leaks out months before the game comes out. Not only that, but the game has been all over the place with its release dates. It's like, this to me, like, it feels like this is most likely. I know there's a lot of emotion tied up in what we've seen because, let's be real, those leaks and that story that's out there now from what we've seen, it's not good. It's not, right? So, like, you look at that and you go, oh, it's pretty off-putting, especially for longtime fans of the game. And I definitely get that, because when I saw the leaks, I said, wow, that's not going to go over well online at all. And it hasn't. So the idea of this happening and the idea of someone taking advantage of a security vulnerability that Naughty Dog, I guess, just completely missed, feels more like management incompetence overall. And that I don't think would sit well with Sony in the long run. Like, at least if it's an employee, like if it's like a disgruntled employee, right? Sony will be like, well, we'll take care of them real quick, right? And, you know, it's basically drop this massive lawsuit and the person won't be able to do much in the gaming industry ever again. That's one of the reasons why the angry employee is still kind of a weird, like, idea with that, because, like, would someone really want to ruin their entire future in the gaming industry just to leak the game out? That's the part that still kind of sits with me, and I'm like, I don't know about that. But the idea of Naughty Dog having a hard time with a hacking group that figured out a vulnerability does seem more likely, but I almost feel like it makes Naughty Dog look worse. It makes them look incompetent, specifically the management around the project. So this all started up last night. Pixelbutts put an entire thread on Twitter that they're very knowledgeable. They certainly, I think, had information from the hacking group that was doing this, that managed to get The Last of Us Part 2 builds and information from Naughty Dog servers. They go into great detail about it. And then about 7 hours later, Jason Schreier popped up on Twitter, put a message that said that he had been talking with people who were knowledgeable around the leak, how it happened, and then also talked with Naughty Dog employees who, I'm sure they're bringing them in and saying, hey, this is what's going on. It's going to be a tough 2 months, but, you know, we'll get there for the release of the game. So they would most likely have been obviously part of some meetings in the studio about what's going on right now. But I wanted to jump over here to Pixelbutts' Twitter thread that goes on saying, for those of you interested in Last of Us 2 leaks and how it happened, here's your rundown. And it is a long thread. I mean, they go over the timeline of events and how it happened. But the bigger things here mentions that every Naughty Dog game has a final patch that is pushed to the game that contains an Amazon AWS key that, when paired with a secret bucket ID, it will give full access to the server's contents. There's a different key and bucket ID per game. This is important. They say this vulnerability was discovered recently and some hackers took full advantage of it, saving Last of Us 1, Uncharted 3, and other dev stuff. At the time, it was disclosed to me around early February and was very early on, so January 2020 it was discovered. Now, the first leak for Last of Us Part 2, from what I remember, showed up right at the beginning of April. I think it was like April 3rd or 4th. It just found its way onto YouTube. It was ripped down after a few hours by Sony, but it was clear that something was off. Something was not right, considering it looked like real gameplay, and then Sony rips it down. Yeah, it almost felt like we were starting to realize that someone had the build for the game and more could be coming. Now they go on to say come March, keys and data was saved somewhere around 1 to 3 terabytes, though I can only say 1 terabyte for sure. They were trying to dump Last of Us 1 in an effort to get that game's key, as Uncharted 3 had Last of Us 1 material, so surely Last of Us 1 had Last of Us 2. No idea in the end, but come April, things got spicy, saying in April all the leaks of story were validated by the footage posted. I cannot speak for the text post with story, but I can say that the dates from discovery and disclosure match with timestamps in the footage as well. You can check yourself. Bottom left of all footage. Now, the interesting part here is that Naughty Dog seemed to realize that this obviously was happening, and they decided at the end of the month, they say May 30th, I mean, say March 30th, late at night, the source that disclosed this to me stated that the key had changed, so Naughty Dog for sure knew how to resolve this issue, and no keys work with the bucket IDs now. This is good, but there's more. The individual that spoke to me is a direct source of this compromise, but is not the one that leaked this material. I say this because even they were weirdly skeptical about the Naughty Dog employee leaked things because they were mad. I've been watching this for about 3 months now, and after speaking to a first-hand source of this, my only conclusion is that they, and their immediate circle, did not leak it, but shared information relating to what I described, and another party proceeded to leak such material. Now, that's not surprising for me to hear. I mean, think about it this way. You get what's probably, the most anticipated game of the year, probably for several people of like almost the last decade almost. It's been a while. It's been a long ride for Last of Us Part 2, wondering when the sequel for Last of Us 1 would show up, all of this. So naturally, you get your hands on it. You look in there and you see those leaks, and you might stop and go, I got to show this to somebody, right? That's kind of what it's being said here. So they show it to other people, most likely by uploading it and then sending it to somebody, like the gameplay footage. That person looks at it and says, well, I gotta go leak this. And they do. So it's basically like a grapevine of passing this footage around, and then eventually it gets on the internet. Now, Pixelbutts goes on to say, what's the point I'm making? The point, there's plenty of room to argue. A Naughty Dog employee is involved, but from the evidence, which I have submitted to Naughty Dog back in February, stands to point to a Naughty Dog made security vulnerability that was exploited, not an angry employee. While I will not give names, I will say this. I've been around. I know leaks. I listen. I watch. I keep tabs on things. I've known about this for months and kept quiet publicly. And since it's blocked out now and news coverage confirmed what I've known, I decided to say so publicly. They say, don't believe what sounds like the juiciest story, even if it's what you want to hear. Sometimes it's really that boring. Hackerman exploiting a vulnerability created by the company's own games to gain internal access. Hopefully this has been enlightening for you. And we won't really know the whole story for a while, to be honest. It really will be, could be months to a year even after the game comes out, especially if Sony pursues legal action, which I have to imagine they will. They'll probably want to make an example out of this group that managed to hack in, get the game, because that on its own is like obviously theft of copywritten code. That's a problem. But then, of course, the person who managed to get it and then leak it online is also in some trouble. So there's, as they say, Sony said individuals, let's say, okay, the hacking scene here, the hacking group did get the game, put it out there. There are going to be a lot of people that are going to be named in probably court documents, filings, all of this stuff. So that's when we'll know for sure what really happened here, because right now the only statement we have from Sony is that they have identified individuals. That's all they've really said so far that are not associated with Naughty Dog or Sony. And then, of course, we hear this information from Pixelbutts, Jason Schreier, who, of course, was the one who reported about the crunch in the first place that's got people to think that an employee would be involved with this leaking stuff, has said that it is also, from what he has heard, a hacker or hacking group. The other stuff are things like Reddit posts that are anonymous, of course, so it could be like someone makes something up, puts it out there, but I understand people are still not going to be 100% on board the hacking group literally stealing the build of the game to then take a look at and then put online. That's just not going to happen. There's still going to be the thought of an employee out there that did not like what was going on for some reason, whether it's pay or the direction of the game or any of this stuff, and decided to leak it out there. But I will say that out of these different scenarios makes the least amount of sense. So while I'm still like unsure as to which way it would go, I would lean more towards the hacking group that managed to take advantage of what kind of looks like an incompetent Naughty Dog with their security here. But let me know what you guys think about this down below. Make sure you like the video on the way out if you enjoyed it. Dislike it if not, and I'll see you next time.